Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second edition of Career Paths Connects. My name is Antonija Mandić and I will be your moderator today. We started actually 1 year ago with Career Paths Connects, exactly on this day 1 year ago. But due to COVID-19 pandemic, as you all know, unfortunately this year we had to do this conference online. But I'm sure that it's going to be as interesting and as educational as the real deal. And of course, this is just a warm-up for 2022. We have a lot of things to cover today, so let's start. It's a full day, so we're going to begin with welcomes from the people who are behind this year's conference. Founder and CEO of Career Paths, Doli Predović, and Robert Čoban, President of Color Media Communications, partner of this year's conference.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our second Career Paths Connect conference. This year we are virtual. We are welcoming you online for a day full of very, very interesting activities. There will be a few panels, talks with our friends from all over the world. We will be talking about education and how innovation is a tool towards furthering education for all. Today we have a lot of inequalities in the world, which with this pandemic situation have increased even more. And through education and innovation, we can help our societies become better. These are the topics we will be facing in some of the panels you will be able to listen today. We will also be talking with our students, with professionals from all over the world, people who will tell you a little bit how education has helped them in their careers. And well, probably one of the most interesting features of today's conference is the possibility for you to interact with our schools, with schools who have joined the conference from all over the world, and they are available for you to ask questions, to visit them virtually, and to interact with the people who will tell you about what are the experiences you can live in the different schools and universities who are joining us today. Thank you very much. Enjoy the conference and hope to see you again in person next year.
Let's start with our program. First off is a fire chat with a leading Italian digital innovator. His name is Ricardo Donadon, and he's a founder and a chairman at HFarm, biggest digital hub in Europe. And for the next 15 minutes, he will be talking with our own Doli Predović.
Good morning, Ricardo. Good morning, Dolly. It is a great pleasure to have you here with us today. So thank you so much for having accepted our invitation. And I have to say that we're very, very honored to be able to welcome you at our virtual conference, or even better, to open our virtual conference with our conversation together. And so I would like to start off by asking you to tell us briefly how HFarm succeeded in becoming the most advanced European innovation pole, and how this then led to the creation of the HFarm College Campus with all of its education-related aspects. Well, thank you very much. It's an honor for me to be participating in this conference, first of all. HFarm is a project that began back in 2005, following two very successful projects I had undertaken when I was younger. Both projects were in the digital field, and both were ahead of their times for Italy and also for Europe, and both of them were very, very successful. In 2005, I started thinking that I was still very young. I had been very fortunate, and the time was right to give back to the community by creating the conditions that It would encourage the development of new initiatives, of startups, as they were then called in the following years, conditions which could somehow help young people to seize all of the opportunities generated in the digital sector. So H-Farm in the early years started out as an incubator, just a small venture capital that funded young people's initiatives. So the first 10 years were committed to this mission. We invested more than 28 million euro. We gave birth to more than 120 initiatives. Some went extremely well. Others, we can say that they kept on growing steadily, but they never really took off, whilst others did not find the success they perhaps deserved, but they were probably ahead of their times. So I chose to place this project in a rather unusual, special environment in the middle of the fields, in front of the Venice Lagoon, on a large agricultural estate, where what we wanted to do was to put the human factor at the center, the human interface, and this both in terms of what was being done technologically and digitally, but also in terms of the person and the people working on this, because you must never forget that the counterpart is a person living a real life who therefore needed to resonate with the things that he was doing or that she was doing, so as to interpret them correctly. So during the first 10 years we carried out this type of activity with the desire, with the objective of having an impact on young people. But then came a moment in 2012 when I was part of the task force set up by the Italian Minister for Economic Development at the time of the Monti government that made me think that we weren't actually succeeding in having that impact, the one that also the government was trying to achieve with special measures aimed at creating a digital economy, because culturally we weren't ready yet as a country and perhaps also as a continent. So I started to think that for the next steps of H-Farm, which was then listed in 2015, we had to invest heavily on education to create a bridge between innovation and the services that need to be created to help companies transform digitally and the digital culture of young people, so as to create new generations that can leave school, that can leave the school with those skills, and above all, so that they can be the key players in this cultural transformation, which then obviously could contribute in boosting the world of initiatives and startups. So H-Farm in 2015 opened up this substantial stream of education and embarked on a major investment path necessary to obviously create a much larger infrastructure that could adequately accommodate these young people who came to study, and also to create the best possible conditions that would accompany young people from a very early age. In fact, we have invested in 3 international schools, and today we have more than 1,000 students attending our international schools which are based on the IB program, the International Baccalaureate, but with a strong focus on the digital field, as well as a university course that's becoming more and more international, increasingly interesting, which last year graduated the first 70 students in Italy in digital management. So alongside this, there is our consulting group of 340 young people working with major clients that go from Gucci to Adidas and Henkel, so very important companies that are supporting the digital transformation, and then also a group of young start-uppers that coexist in the same place and that are instead focused on the success of their ideas and on the success of their initiatives. Thank you, Ricardo, for having given us an insight into the world of H-Farm. It seems to me that the really interesting aspect is this coming together, this coexisting. They all live in the same context, they all know each other. The young people who attend international students with the university H-Farm students, so they basically live shoulder to shoulder. They move from cafe to cafe together with all of these start-uppers, innovators, as well as the group of consultants. So this really seems to be a very interesting thing. Even because, I mean, usually what happens is that we hear about Silicon Valley or we hear about Stanford University as being the places that want to create innovation. In the case of H-Farm, instead, success may somehow come from the fact that education is the outcome, as you suggested, is the outcome of innovation, the innovation that takes place within the H-Farm campus. So thank you very much for this first explanation and this initial introduction. As someone who knows H-Farm and who knows you, I would at this point ask you to expand on the learning methods that you use at H-Farm. The methods which are the outcome of the innovation that you pursue. And this applies both to some of the training academies that you have inside H-Farm, but it also applies to your DNA. And I know that you are a benchmark in Italy as far as virtual reality is concerned. So most of the lessons of the IB for IB students are already done through the virtual reality medium. There's a project to expand virtual reality even more as a learning method tool. And this makes technology not an end, but rather a means to help kids learn more, learn faster. And I think that this really is your vision. This reflects your vision that I really find fascinating. Yes, so we have a rather atypical situation compared to the classic training provider or the classic operator who is involved in training, because we have this technological background. And this the technological background is at the very heart of the project. So from the very start, we always thought about how we could contribute while we were learning how to deliver training, while we were gathering people around our project, people who had the skills in something that for us was obviously not our core know-how. What we could do to spark innovation and to give an edge to the business world. Virtual reality, which in recent months has unfortunately come to the forefront and become very important in its attempt to recreate conditions that are at least minimally comparable to the lessons that were taught in the physical classroom before the pandemic. So, as I was saying, virtual reality for us had immediately been a crucial element of our project. Even before the pandemic, we had expanded the students' courses thanks to the use of virtual reality by creating a digital space that we call the holodeck, where students can enter the classroom, can enter the labs, which are equipped with all of these objects. They enter the classroom together with the teacher, with a virtual reality visor, and what happens is that the teacher retrieves from a virtual shelf which is inside this classroom, a classroom which is usually empty. So the teacher retrieves the topic, the object of the lesson, and the teacher positions this topic at the very center of the room, and then the teacher delivers the chemistry rather than the biology or astronomy lesson. And the lesson is delivered with the object in its real dimensions. Now, this immediately arouses a very high level of attention on the part of the students. The students are able to focus on what is being explained, concentration becomes very strong, and it also gives rise to a whole series of subsequent reflections, precisely because of the virtual presence of the concepts being taught. And this is very different from what happens during a typical classroom lesson instead. So all this immediately gave us the perception of being in front of something very, very powerful. Our schools are already Apple distinguished schools, so they are already highly technological. But with this technology, a world has opened up, a world which was then given a strong boost by the pandemic. And we were able to create the conditions of a virtual classroom where students could study from home. And this is really making us dream. It is making us dream about what will be the next steps, because with the experience we have made in recent months, we can think of introducing, and we will be doing this as early as this September, a training course that will be a mix between virtual reality, the use of Zoom, and other tools like the ones we've been using over the past few months, as an alternative to requiring a physical presence on campus. And this could, in some way, let's say, allow many more students to join our virtual campus, many more than could physically join it in the future. So we are considering of opening up the school to many more people that we can practically reach anywhere, creating more training opportunities. Now, it is clear that in our campus, the big advantage, as you mentioned, is the fact that, I mean, we have created a campus of over 35 hectares, so it's a huge area, and it has more than 600 people working for H-Farm, in addition to the 1,500 students today, with growing numbers expected for the next few months. So the fact that we're all close together, the fact that we can study with people who maybe are working on a business project, or people who are inventing something related to this business project, well, all this will be hard to replicate and to have in a virtual environment. But I think that this mix of technology with the teaching methods, with the learning methods, and with the business aspect, it's something that will be giving excellent results. Thank you, Ricardo. Thank you very much. You have told us about a future that really makes us dream. And I have to say that when I visited H-Farm, thanks to you, I too had these virtual reality experiences. You took me to Saturn. I touched the Saturn's rings. So it was a very exciting experience. And I keep stressing the word experience, which is linked to what you were saying, in the sense that these young people become engaged. In my way of seeing, you know, that I deal with education on a more theoretical level, because precisely because they are engaged. It's not just a series of notions for them, it's a first-hand experience which they end up owning. So it's a learning strategy based on a virtual experience, but still an experience that really, I think, contributes to the growth and development of these young people. Then the other topic that you addressed is that of the virtual campus. If I understood correctly, you say that there are young people anywhere in the world, even in the most remote places, where maybe they do not have access to university, and all they need to have is the right equipment, and it becomes possible for them to, I mean, this is the project of the future, obviously, and it becomes possible for them to join the H-Farm campus. And so really they can walk around the campus, they can attend lessons. Yes, absolutely. This opportunity is, if you like, the most beautiful thing about the project, because one of the pillars, one of the values that we all wanted from the very beginning when we set up this education stream was to be able to have diverse users entering the campus, trying to be as inclusive as possible. Inclusive as to the talents, as to the people who can join and who can bring with them their contribution of knowledge, of way of living, and can transfer this to the community of students we have on campus. So with this approach today, we can be very inclusive towards a lot of young people who might have the aspiration of entering this school, or maybe they may have the desire of becoming part of this, but for a number of reasons are unable to do so. Maybe because they're too far away, or because they have physical impediments, or maybe because they cannot afford it. And so, well, we can step in and create the conditions that would allow them to enter through scholarships or other solutions. But, you know, I think that virtual reality decreases the scope of the investment and creates the conditions for which there is no need to physically move, whilst at the same time guaranteeing a very high level of experience and of top, I think, learning quality. Well, with this beautiful dream, I would like to thank you very much for your contribution, and we do hope that we will all be able to achieve the objectives that you have envisioned for the future of education. So thank you very much, Ricardo. Thanks to you.
Thank you, Dolly, and thank you, Ricardo, of course. It's time for our first panel discussion today, moderated by, again, Dolly Predovic. Our esteemed panelists are Elspeth Jones, Emerita Professor of the Internationalization of Higher Education at Leeds Beckett University, and Francisco Marmolejo, Educational Advisor of Qatar Foundation, and they will be talking about emerging trends in innovation and internationalization of education. Dolly, take it away.
Good morning, Francisco. Good morning, Elsbeth. Very nice to have you here, and thank you for joining this talk for our conference. So, first of all, I would like to introduce you to, and even better, ask you to introduce yourself through the work you are doing in the field of education. I know, Francisco, you are, I think, now also physically in Doha in this moment. And if you could tell us a little bit about the field of education within the Qatar Foundation you have joined recently after being in the World Bank.
Thank you very much, Dolly, and great to see also Elspeth and participating at this event. As you indicate, just a little bit before, you know, I think it is going to be next week when I will have my first year here in Doha, working at Qatar Foundation after my, you know, number of years working at the World Bank in the field of higher education in different countries. And the reason I decided to come to Doha is because they have established a very unique, very interesting educational ecosystem that encompasses a variety of institutions from kindergarten to doctoral education in the same area, which is Education City. It is the largest educational investment of its kind at a global scale. And in this ecosystem, they already have attracted the participation of both, you know, well-known institutions such as Carnegie Mellon, Texas A&M, Georgetown University, and others. And at the same time, they have created their own university, which is in this case HBKU, and also a number of educational institutions, each of them with their own unique characteristic. You know, you have, for instance, Academiati, which is a school with no curriculum, or you have a school, secondary school, that specializes in traditional education plus music, or another school that brings together the whole issue of STEM into education, or even a school for students with special needs, but also as a way to mainstream them into the educational system. So the whole idea of bringing together this entire ecosystem of institutions, and then to connect those to other entities that apparently may not have a connection with, but at the same time are part of the same educational experience, such as the National Library, such as the sports program and stadium, and also the National Science and Technology Council, and name it. It is an umbrella of 40 different organizations that all of them work together with the same goal, which is unlocking the potential of individuals in order for them to become productive, healthy, and happy members of society, both locally and globally. Because what the Qatar Foundation does is that brings together students from all over the world to be part of this educational experience, recognizing that as you are able to connect both education with science and a community and health, you really bring together the whole idea of the human integral capital development as a way to empower people to become, again, the type of citizens that the world is going to need in the future.
Wow, it sounds so interesting. Thank you very much for giving us this overview of this education city. Also, the name is so enticing. I can't wait to come and visit this microcosm of all things together that synergically works towards educating the individuals for their role in their respective societies. Thank you. Elsbeth, well, education has always been your topic, and international education, and especially all these topics about both international education in terms of mobility experiences going abroad and how to make these experiences, the benefits of international experiences, also accessible to the students who stay at home. So if you could tell us a little bit about this, linked to obviously what Francisco was telling about Education City in Doha.
Yeah, thanks very much, Dolly, and thank you for inviting me. Always great to see Francisco as well. I think what they're doing in Doha is really interesting, and but I think we've got to, the idea of innovation in education has got to be beyond technology, beyond, you know, these special activities and so on. We've got a real challenge with inequality in the world, as you know, and I think it's interesting to hear Francisco talking about how we're reaching, you know, how we can reach so many people. I think part of the issue is that sometimes we think of the technology before we think of the actual challenge, how we're going to deliver it, how we're going to bring education to more and more people, quality education to more and more people, without necessarily thinking too much about even buildings or even, you know, the technology that might be used. We have a challenge really to help people imagine what education might be beyond the traditional delivery in a classroom. And so one of the areas I'm particularly interested in, internationalization at home or internationalization of the curriculum, really focuses on what we do for every single student, albeit, you know, education is still unequal. We've only got a very small proportion of the world's population actually taking part in education. So we need to bring more people in, but those people who are there, we need to bring the benefits of internationalization to all of them, the benefits of an international outlook, different ways of thinking about the world, different global perspectives. One of the ways people have been doing this for some time is through exactly what we're doing now, through online education, connecting classrooms in different countries or individuals in different countries to try and help them get alternative perspectives to their own. You know, so we all think the way I've been brought up is the normal way of doing things. Well, of course it isn't. Everybody has a different normal. And so connecting people in other countries and to each other is one way of doing it, but it's had a relatively small take-up. It's also called collaborative online international learning. And relatively speaking, people think it's very difficult and think it's very, you know, it's going to be too challenging to make these things happen. And so we have to think about how we can train the teachers, how we can help teachers to think differently about these things. And it's not simply about, have I got the most up-to-date technology or the best facilities and so on. It's about how we use the technology that we have, or make the most of the students' opportunities to give, you know, greater equality across the board for education.
Thank you. Yes, I think this is, you really struck the point I'm also very passionate passionate about. I think a very important role here is within the educators. They have to be prepared, because only if they are prepared to use these technologies to thoroughly understand and share the view of the importance of these international virtual activities, they can then transport them and inform their students about it. And so given that our audience, I think, is also interested in international activities and what really are these benefits, can you explain a little better why this is so important for people to be able to connect virtually or physically with people for other countries? How can this benefit themselves, the society, and the workplaces where they will end up working?
Do you want to start, Francisco?
I think there are plenty of reasons that explain why this is important. First of all, there is no doubt, Dolly, that we live in a world which is increasingly interconnected and also is increasingly interdependent. And especially now we know that very clearly based on what is happening with the pandemic. And the need for individuals to have an integral understanding of themselves as well as the otherness, the capacity to see yourself in the lenses of the others, it is probably the only way in which we can achieve the goal of having more harmony and also more peace and more progress and more understanding, and you name it, all those type of things. So on one way, you have the reasons of competitiveness. The other, you have the reasons of just humankind in order to become those type of integral individuals that we hope that educational systems are going to be preparing for. And, of course, traditional ways used to be traveling, but as Elspeth is properly indicating, traveling had been confined in the past just for a few. If education by itself is elitist, unfortunately, international education on the traditional way is even much more elitist. So we need to figure out ways in which the majority of students, all our students, can experience that otherness, can experience that capacity to see themselves in the lenses of the others as a way to become the tolerant, multicultural, multilingual, multi-competencies, multi-perspectives individuals that we consider that are going to be needed for the future. Kipling used to say that the only way you can, understand another culture is by smelling the other culture. Of course, that used to be the traditional approach. Today, still in Zoom, we cannot transmit smellings or odors, but probably in the future that is. But the point that I'm trying to make is that certainly technology is a significant enabler that we can use in order to spread out more the possibilities of this international dimension in knowledge. But of course, it is not enough. If teachers are not aware and more important, if teachers are not convinced that that's part of their mission in the preparation of students, of course, students won't be able to enjoy that capacity to live out of the zone of comfort.
I agree with that. I think we've got a problem really with the name internationalization to begin with, because I think it links in with questions of justice and equality and all kinds of other dimensions of life in general. So the idea of international education, bringing that kind of tolerance that Francisco talked about, is linked with so many other dimensions of education, but we're kind of stuck with this word internationalization somehow. In fact, pretty much every society in the world now is multicultural in turn, because there's been so much migration, mobility of people. The world is made up of different cultures which are meeting more and more. So as Francisco said, that interconnectedness of the world, we're surrounded by people who previously, certainly when I was a child and grew up in a very small, very restricted part of the country, I wouldn't have been exposed to all the different kind of views and opportunities that people have now. So we've got to be preparing people from different backgrounds for that kind of diversity that we face in the world now, and from which we can learn so much. And it's a learning opportunity. This is what we need to get across. I don't know how, I'm sure you've got so many meetings this week, Francisco, but I looked at my diary and I realized this week I'm talking to people on 6 different continents. And it's so exciting. I would never have been able to do that physically. So I can only do it through, online conversations. But each time I'm talking to people, I'm learning from what they're saying. Today, this conversation, I'm learning things. I will be in the other conversations I have for the rest of the week. And it's just so exciting to have that kind of, try and help people have an open-minded, curious approach to the world, rather than being, thinking about their national system and patriotic, and we've got to fight for our country kind of thing, which has got a place, but we need also to think about where our country fits and where our people and ourselves fit within that global context. And so all of these things are really crucial.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate, and I think there are some very important concepts that came out from this talk. And I would like to underline a few of the words you mentioned and how they are linked together. Well, obviously, the world, our societies are becoming, as you said, Elspeth, more and more diverse. And this interconnectedness that is created around the world, I think that one of the most important words here is the otherness. Through this interconnectedness, we really are able to understand the otherness, to see what it means, and therefore this all ends up in increasing the learning opportunities for all of us. I think that given that we are on a conference of education, it's the learning that this allows us, and this understanding the otherness, that it's something we should take home from this conversation. So thank you very much for joining in, for giving us these important concepts. And I hope to see you soon, also in person, sooner or later, after all these nice chats we had online. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much, Dolly.
Thank you all for this very interesting discussion. Next up, we have a workshop themed Passion for Success. It will be presented to you by Professor Goran Vlašić, Council Chair at Innovation Institute and Associate Professor at Faculty of Economics and Business, University of Zagreb.
Hello everyone, it is my pleasure to welcome you to our today's topic, Passion for Success. My name is Goran Vlašić and I'm the Council Chair of Innovation Institute here in Croatia, also operating around the globe. So just to introduce to you why and where we started as Innovation Institute. We started from a couple of interesting observations. One observation is such that try to name 15 companies in the whole world which are more than 150 years old. We would expect that it is easy to name those companies. We expect that large companies which exist today will exist there forever. However, if you try to name them, try to remember them, try to see which one of them survived for so long, it is really hard, especially if you take away highly regulated industries, such as tobacco industry, such as banking, and other regulated industries. So this was first observation. Why do so few companies survive? Second observation, if you look at Fortune 500 list, the speed at which the largest companies disappear is increasing over years. In 1955, so all those companies which were listed as biggest companies in the world in 1955, it took about 30 years for 250 of them to disappear, for 50% of them to disappear. Those listed in 1995, it only took about 12 years for 50% of them to disappear from the list. So it's not just that the big are disappearing, they're disappearing faster and faster. And third thing, the more successful they are today, the more likely they are to disappear and fail tomorrow, as organizations, but also as individuals. So if you, probably most of you are too young to remember some of these companies, but there was Google before Google. There was Amazon before Amazon. Largest companies in their industries, which just disappeared, which never saw the change coming, which were not able to understand the innovation or create the innovation. And interestingly, one of the richest people in the world even says today that Amazon is not too big to fail, that he predicts Amazon will fail one day, around 30 years' time, and the goal is for everybody to postpone this day as long as possible. So with these observations, we at the Innovation Institute organized a global set of top scholars who are looking at why does this happen? Why do companies which were once tremendous, they created industries, they changed the world we live in, how come they disappeared? How come they stopped existing? And interestingly enough, first clue was that they innovated. They were started on a tremendous innovation. All of them basically had an interesting innovation, but the problem is they innovated basically once and never again. The larger and the more successful they became, the quality of innovation was substituted by the quantity. They started coming up with a lot of little things, but missed the big things happening. Now, we dug deeper into why is this situation. And we ended up running into an interesting set of contexts in which our brain blocks. Those are contexts which have high ambiguity and high uncertainty. This means, for example, COVID situation. It's very ambiguous what is going on, how it will end, when it will end. It creates a tremendous amount of uncertainty. These contexts, such also are innovations. In innovation, we don't know. It's very ambiguous which innovation will succeed. It's very risky to invest. When you are a kid thinking about your startup project, nobody knows whether it's going to succeed. None of us are prophets who are going to be able to predict whether you will succeed. So in these situations, when we need creativity, when we need innovation, when we need ourselves to be able to see the change and create the change, and this is what we expect from future generations, to be drivers of change, the brain blocks. So we looked into a couple of biological aspects of human body. So we looked at several systems, but I'm just going to talk to you about two little things. One is the brain, which does not want to decide, which does not want to think, which does not want to be creative. We think that we are all creative by birth. The truth is we are curious but not creative. So creativity is a very, very tedious job for the brain. It's not natural to the brain to be creative. So the whole thing is we need to trick it into creativity, which is not natural to him. And the second one is the heart. Heart which does nothing else but pumps blood. Blood which carries oxygen and glucose primarily, which burn and creates energy for our cells. So the heart needs to deliver enough energy to the brain so the brain can operate. Having that in mind, the amount of energy that heart needs to pump to the brain is a huge amount. And therefore, brain tries to use the least amount possible and arrive to a satisfying solution. Not the most creative, not the smartest solution, not the best solution, but what is called satisfying solution, good enough. This is what you see in your exams, this is what you see in your studies. You try to learn, you try to put enough effort, just enough to achieve your goal. Not to learn everything about the topic, but just enough to, for example, pass an exam. So this is how our brain operates. Again, heart is the one which needs to pump blood. Now, if you think about your brains, they're the ones who, unlike most other important organs in the body, are against gravity. So although we have blood pressure, which controls how much energy goes to each part of our body, it is much harder to pump enough blood to the brain. Second thing, brain expands blood vessels to send blood where it needs to process. But unlike, for example, arm or any other organ or such muscles, brain does not have a muscle which directs blood. What the brain does is actually leans your whole body. For example, you've noticed for sure that when you need to focus, when you need to concentrate, when you need to study, The brain is the one which leans you forward. You lean forward, you start massaging your head when you need to study something which is complex, when you need to have logical reasoning capabilities. This is because these are done predominantly in the frontal part of your brain. And this is how the brain fights for blood. When you need to think something abstract, something new, something weird, all of us lean back and look up left. Why? Because it drives the blood to our brain where it needs it to solve such problems. And this is how these two organs continuously play together to help us make decisions. But having said that, we need to make sure we know how they operate so that we can trick them into working with us, not against us. Because the brain, what it really wants to do is just run this reptilian, quote-unquote, part of the brain. This is the part of the brain which does not think. The only thing it does, have I seen this before? For example, this is when you come to your parents, or if you remember when you were a bit younger, or even now, and when you tell them, Mom, Dad, I got an F in math. This is the brain which forces you to say the next sentence, which is usually, but everybody failed. Or John, Mike, and Jenny also failed. Because this part of your brain is trying to give your parents a reference point, so they don't have to think about whether you did poorly or you did good. This is the way you tell them. And if you don't tell them, for example, if you come home and say, Mom, Dad, I got an A in math, first thing this part of their brain asks you is, what did everybody else get? What did John get? What did Jenny get? They always need a reference point. This part of the brain is also strong enough to control what you're capable of doing. The more sure you are of yourself, for example, if I'm tremendously good at math, this part of the brain will be the only one operating. It will not allow my neocortex to turn on, because neocortex uses too much energy. This part of the brain will be stronger the more capable I am in a certain area. This is why if you're a tremendously good student in math, you're more likely to make mistakes with simple operations such as adding, subtracting, dividing, and multiplying numbers. Because if I'm really good, this is the curse of success I was mentioning, this part of the brain will be too strong to let any other part of the brain operate. Now, if I'm not good enough then in math, then my brain, reptilian brain, is not going to feel confident, and it's going to send blood to the rest of my brain, which will then use all its energy to add numbers and subtract numbers. Again, this is why if I am better in math, I'm more likely to fail at simple operations. Now, so just for our story, let's keep at these two simple things. Reptilian brain, which does not want to think, and neocortex, which does think but uses a ton of energy. When you decide about your universities, when you decide about anything, reptilian brain looks at what did my friends decide. It tries to just, because it's a very complex decision. So the natural reaction is for this brain to just look at what did others do. What did others decide in this situation? This is how I simplify my choice. This is how I simplify what I'm going to decide. Now, there is a ton of different problems that brain creates. First of all, brain doesn't want to create value. It is not natural for brain to come up with something completely new. It just wants to disseminate value. If I see somebody successful, if I see somebody opening a barbecue shop, I'm going to open a barbecue shop. If I see somebody doing something successful, I'm going to do it. This is why, if you have any industry, any area of business where there is profits, this is my brain, the reptilian brain, which says, look, if they're earning profits off of it, I'm going to enter. I'm going to do it better, cheaper. And we drive each other's profits down, because as long as there is profits, I can copy that. I can take some of that value. It's really hard to create completely new value. Second thing, our brain doesn't want to think in long term. This is why, for example, many of us are guilty of deciding about universities by deciding what did my friends do, which universities they chose, not what is the future I want to live in. Because with university, deciding about university, you're not buying courses, classes. You're buying into your future. You're buying into your future decisions, your future life, private life, as well as professional life. Because at universities, you're most likely to meet your future spouse. So it does influence your future private life. It does also influence your professional life because you're choosing your career. Of course, you can switch careers, you can switch spouses, but it puts you on a certain path course. But the brain doesn't want to think about those long terms, doesn't want to devote so much energy. It just wants to make a split decision. It doesn't want to think in abstract. What is going to be in 10 years' time? How is the world going to look like? It just wants to do applied thinking. What can I make money off of today? This is why your brain is more likely to choose universities and programs which are training you to what is today required, what is today well paid, such as coding. But have in mind, you should be also focusing on not what is popular today, but what is likely to be popular in the future. Because you're buying into your future, you're not buying courses for today. And your brain does not want new, does not want unexpected stuff. Our brains are trained to ignore everything which is not along the lines of what I believe in, which is not along the lines of what I want to believe in. So if somebody comes to you and tells you something which is not aligned with what your brain thinks, your brain will discredit either the information and say that this information is irrelevant, or the person giving you this information. This is why you should force your brain to look for something new, something unexpected, rather than stick to the old and expected. This is why you should explore enough information. This is why you should force yourselves to explore and learn new perspectives, giving them opportunity to change the world you live in, to change the box from which you view the world. Because the key thing, if you want to get yourselves to be successful, is to work against these limitations of the brain. Now, I'm not going to get into details of the economics of it, but if you end up finishing your universities one day and entering into labor force, starting your companies, whatever the future brings for you, if you're going to be doing undifferentiated labor, which means the same thing everybody else does, the same thing if I take somebody just as somebody from your cohort at the university, and I can easily replace you with that person, then the value that you're creating is low. If you're only doing within some limitations where we taught you what to do and how to do it, these days I can better train artificial intelligence systems to do it with less mistakes at much lower costs. The key value that you can create is by learning certain disciplines and being able to advance them, to be creative in them, to be able to deliver a new value, create new value, rather than just disseminate value within the existing system. Now, this creativity that is required of you, whichever area you choose, usually is linked to thinking outside the box. But when you look at the brain, it's not really thinking outside the box, because the brain cannot think outside the box. It's actually much more simple, but at the same time very tough. Think about the box. Push your heart to give enough energy to the brain so that the brain can understand the box, can understand the box from which you view the world. Those who have succeeded are those who we really respect. In business, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, top 2 of the wealthiest people on earth currently living. They both changed the boxes. Take, for example, Elon Musk. NASA, the smartest people in the air and space industry work there. They had the whole process figured out. They launched a man to the moon. They launched satellites. But this guy changed the box, changed how these things are done. He's not an expert in the field, but he just added one little thing to the box. He thought about the box and thought about, why don't we return the rocket down back to Earth? With this, space travel, launching satellites, became 10 times less expensive, even more, depending on the source you look at. He completely changed how we look at the world. Amazon and Jeff Bezos changed the way we shop, changed the way we do digital, changed the way we do cloud. He changed the box we live in. He created the future that we're still living in. Steve Jobs created smartphone revolution, basically. Smartphones which were used by managers before for very functional purposes are now taking over and becoming an important interaction machine between technology and humans. Completely changed the way, the logic, an industry functions, such as music industry. Now we buy subscriptions. We don't buy CDs. He changed so many aspects of the logic from which we operate. Each one of them indifferent. In physics, in air and space industry, in digital industry, in basically engineering. So all these guys created tremendous changes in boxes, innovated the box we look at the world from. In science, Isaac Newton changed the box we see the world from. Understood something which everybody else took for granted. He understood and explained things at the age of 20-something. He was not old. He was very young when he learned about gravity, when he explained his laws to us. Laws which created modern economics, created industrial revolutions. And then Einstein, who again changed the box from which we view the world around us. So the best thing when you choose universities, don't just think about how you can cater to your brain and learn the minimum you need to learn. Think about how you can learn enough so you can understand the box of this this field and be able to advance it, to change the box from which we view the world. Even in art, if you look at Picasso, Picasso was the millennial of the 1800s. When he was born in 1881, a new technology was created, which is a photo camera, operational mass market photo camera. What happened with Picasso? All of a sudden, painters which were used to draw portraits, painters who were there to draw paintings of important events such as coronations, such as battles, they were replaced by a machine which could do it better. Same thing which happened with millennials these days. Something that a human did was replaced by a machine, by a computer, by a mobile. So what do? You can give up and say the world is rigged against you, or you can change the box of the whole art, of the whole industry, of the whole topic. You can become an either unemployed artist, or you can create a completely new area within the painting community. And this is why his paintings are worth a lot. Now, if you play a short mind game, you will see how your brain operates. Try to just play it at home. So think about this problem. You will have 5 seconds to solve the problem. The ball and a bat together cost $1.10. A bat costs $1 more than a ball. How much is the ball? You have 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. So how much is the ball? I'm sure that your brain is telling you 10 cents. But if you think about it, if the ball is 10 cents, a bet is $1 more, that would be 10 cents plus $1.10, which is $1.20. So it's not the correct answer. But the correct answer is not important. The important is what did happen in your brain. Only reptilian brain got stimulated, which doesn't think. It just looks and finds links, analogies, comparisons. It saw here $1.10, here is $1, and it looked that the difference is what is being asked from the brain. So the difference is 10. Well, we know now it's not 10. But for the brain, for the reptilian brain, that was, as I told you, it's not trying to come up with the best solution, most creative solution. It's just there to come up with a satisfying solution. And the more successful we are, the more capable we are, the more likely it is to make mistakes and not allow the rest of the brain to do the actual calculation. So, with such a brain, which is rigged against us, which has all these problems, the question is, how do we push it to do more? How do we push it to do better? Again, let me give you one short game. On this board, which has only green and red boxes, start with any green square. Then move left or right to the closest red square. Then move up or down to the closest green square. Then move diagonally in any of the 4 directions to the closest red square. And lastly, move down or right to the closest green square. Okay? Now, if you follow the instructions, the last point forces you to choose a green square. If you follow the instructions correctly, you should have ended up in one of these 2 squares. If you did the game, if you play the game by the rules of the game, within the box that I gave you, all of you should have come up to this point. If you didn't, just go through the game again and make sure you're, and you will see that you will end up in this position. So 256 explicit and implicit decisions have been made, and all of you started where you wanted to and ended up where I wanted you to end up. This is the thing when you think about the box. Boxes are created in a way that the rules are predetermined. For you, in your future, it is important not just to play the game, become the best player in the game, but become somebody who is able to understand the rules of the game, the box of the game, whether it's a physics game, whether it's an economics game, whichever area you're interested in. But to be able to do that, you should not allow your brain to do what it wants to do. You should force your brain to do what is unnatural for it to do. Now, to do what is unnatural for it to do, you have to force your heart to pump more blood, deliver more energy. Now, how do we do that? How do we push our blood, our hearts, to pump more blood? Well, if I understand the brain, as I explained to you, I can help myself learn better. For example, never study by leaning backward. Always sit at the table. But I can solve important global problems. One of the most well-known examples is the organ donations, where in Germany, 100% of people donate organs in case they die young. In Austria, 100% of them do that. In Germany, it's 12%. Now, the difference is very simple. It is not that that Austrians are more kind than the Germans. It is actually that in one country, you have to check whether you want to donate your organs in case of death. In Germany, that's the case. 12% of them do it. In Austria, they ask if you do not want. Now, nobody clicks and says, I don't want to donate my organs. This is why 100% of us donate. Now, why is this important? Because in both cases, brain did what it always does. It does not want to decide. It does not want to think. It wants to stick with the default option. I don't want to think what's interesting to me to study. I'm just going to follow what my parents have studied. I'm just going to follow what my friends have decided. The brain doesn't want to think, but as you can see here, even if our brain doesn't want to think, it can tremendously impact our lives. We can be organ donors or not. We can end up in one area of expertise versus other. We can have a certain life as compared to another type of life. Now, why do we want to trick our brains? Why do we need to think about how we as humans can be creative? Why is it important to trick our brains into creativity? Well, because as I told you, the big problem is if we don't, we're just going to be doing predictable things. Predictable things will be soon replaced by things like artificial intelligence system, by any other competitor of ours at the job market. Now, we basically think that our brains are almighty, but they're more like this. Because in evolution, evolution favors survival of the fittest, not the most creative. Imagine some time ago in history, me and somebody else standing in a savannah, and a lion is running toward us. You have two options. I start running, the other person stops to think how to creatively solve the problem. Of course, the one who is eaten is the one who stopped to think. So the brain did not evolve as a creative mechanism. It evolved as an optimizing mechanism, trying to use the least amount of energy to keep us alive. If we survived evolution, then we come to educational systems. Educational systems prefer specialization. They prefer us to specialize in areas, unlike, for example, Leonardo da Vinci, who explored a bunch of different fields. Have in mind, even if you select a certain area of expertise, think about Steve Jobs. Use the opportunity to go listen to other classes. Use the opportunities to learn, to read. Use now opportunities to travel to universities abroad. to universities which are going to offer you a different perspective, a broader perspective. Now, and don't just think about what we do and how we do it, because if we just learn at universities what to do and how to do it, we're going to be possibly replaced by AI systems, because I can more easily train them to do it. Think about things beyond that. How can change what is being done? How can change how things are being done? And have in mind that we are not born creative, but that we should force ourselves, our brains, to be creative. We should force ourselves to listen to additional courses, additional classes. We should force ourselves not to study the minimum amount. We should force ourselves to travel abroad. Even if we succeed to fight against what evolution gave us, even if we succeeded to be most creative we can in educational systems that we have, then we come to companies. Companies which also are rigged toward that reptilian brain. Companies which force a role onto our brain. We always apply for a certain job, certain requirements. These things, again, focus us. And as soon as you focus on one of these dots, you will see that you lose the ability to see the rest of the world. You end up thinking that what you're doing is the only important thing. You end up focusing on what you see as the only reality, and unable to see the breadth, the whole box around you. And remember, the key thing is to have a brain and find a role for this brain, rather than to force the brain into a certain role. This is why, if you think about the past, one single company invented all these things. Ethernet, which is basically today's internet, personal computer, printer, laptop, email, mouse, graphical user interface, text editor. And it's interesting that one single company invented all these things in the last century. We're still living this future. We're still living from this box. Now, you might imagine this company is IBM or Microsoft or one of those big companies we know of. Actually, it's a company called Xerox. They were producing photocopying machines. They invented the future, the box which we live in, but they killed it because the brain doesn't like inconsistencies. My brain doesn't, if I'm all about paper, I don't like paperless office. I'm going to discredit it. I'm going to disregard it. So why are we so good to ignore change? Because if you think about it, the earth we live in, it revolves around itself. Speed is change by definition. Change of change of distance over time. So imagine the earth revolves around itself. Earth revolves around sun. Sun is in some galaxy moving. So there's so much change and movement that our brains had to learn to ignore change. They're trained to ignore change. So we have to force them to see the change and to be able to deliver the change. Now, these are the two individuals solving some creative tasks. The top individual, as you can see, their brain is less stimulated when solving the same task as the bottom one. Now, this is from an interesting research from 2016, if I remember correctly, which actually tested that this individual gave less creative outcome than this guy. It's not about gender, it's not about any of those things. It was actually taken when people were tested. One was given a placebo, the other one was given a drug, LSD. Now, it's not good to conclude that we should be on drugs. Why? Because LSD kills the brain. One usage just kills the brain and it's not able to operate. But there is a cool thing about this, and that is that passion is nature's LSD. So if you don't have a passion for the university you're selecting, for the career you're selecting, your brain is very simply not going to have enough energy. The heart is not going to be pumping enough energy to the brain so that you can be most creative, most successful in this area of expertise. Make sure when you're thinking about the future that you're not buying courses, you're buying your future. Make sure you have passion, because only if you're passionate enough, your brain will have enough energy to operate at its maximum. Only if the brain operates at its maximum will you be able to be successful in the long run. Only then you will be able to discover new opportunities, new ideas, become one of those individuals who are top of your field. Make sure when you select your future careers, when you select your universities, You're not selecting classes. You're not selecting today and tomorrow. You're selecting your future life. You're making an important decision. Make sure that what you select is something you have passion for. Only then will you be able to perform at your best and compete with the best. Only then will you be able not to be one of those who is living inside the box, but you are going to be able to think about the box. But to be able to do that, you continuously, now and during your studies and during your whole life, just like exercise, you need to make sure you persistently train your brain. So in the end, in the area of your expertise, you can force yourself to think different, which is well summed in a commercial by Apple.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. While some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
So have in mind, just for the end, whatever you decide to do, don't be blinded by others. Don't allow your reptilian brain to take over your lives. Make sure you conquer yourselves. You conquer yourselves, your brain, to do the maximum, to do what is best for you. Don't be blinded by conquering others. Don't forget to challenge and conquer yourselves. And the only important part of the story is to choose whatever you want to choose, but make sure that whatever you decide to do, you have passion for it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Vlašić. Let us now move to our second panel of this year's conference. It's called Your Career is Our Goal, from the student perspective. Our panelists are Milena Đuričić, co-founder and COO at Videomite, the biggest Turkish digital distributor; Tanja Golešić, President Jimmy Choo Americas; Eric Vilenci, CEO of Vilenci Group, an interior and product design group; and Sebastian Sul, CEO of Trussardi. The panel will be moderated by Ea Crnić, one of our students at Career Paths.
Okay, so hello everyone. Thank you all for being here. It's nice to meet you all finally. And well, let's just get right into it. So the first question I actually have for you from the student's perspective is, when you were going to university, were you certain that the area that you chose was actually what you wanted to actually do for the rest of your lives? So for example, could maybe Eric answer me this?
No, not at all. I knew I wanted to do something creative, and I wasn't really sure exactly how that would look. So I studied a lot of design. I knew that I pretty much would end up doing something creative, but I really didn't know exactly what the opportunities were or what I wanted to do. So it kind of just unfolded.
Okay. Milena, what about you? Would you agree, or was it different for you?
For me, I discovered something called internet when I was in high school. This is something that just appeared in the world. I was going to high school in early 90s, just for the record. And I discovered something called internet. And I was just so fascinated with the opportunities. And I just knew that I'm going to do something internet related. So I don't know if it's luck, but somehow I felt that this is going to be part of my job for the rest of my life.
Okay. And did you, Milena, at any point actually regret your decision? Like, did you ever feel like maybe you wanted to do something else, or were you actually very happy with your decision?
I'm very happy with my decision, but like I was doing very, very different jobs because the internet field is such a different and vast area. So I think I'm very happy with how my career was unfolding and where I am now. So yes, I didn't regret it, no.
Okay. So while we're still talking about universities, there is this master's degree. So I wanted to ask you about your opinion on the master's degree and whether you think it's actually a good thing, because many people actually do not take up the same master's degree like in the same area as their undergraduate choice. So basically this actually opens more doors to them later on in life. So would you say that it's a good thing, or what's your general opinion of the master's degree? What would you say, Sebastian?
I mean, I grew up, like some of the others on the panel, states where, you know, undergraduate is kind of a moment of exploration for many people. You're not expected to necessarily know what you want to do when you go into undergraduate studies. On the contrary, it's encouraged. In my case, very much, I went to a liberal arts college where it's absolutely encouraged and even mandatory to study many different things, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's what I did, which was good because I didn't know what I wanted to do at all when I was in college. And, you know, when I did MBA studies a few years later, I had a somewhat better idea. So I think, I mean, you know, it's different for everyone, but I think it's very positive to explore as much as you can when you have the luxury to do so, you know, when you're in your teens and 20s, and then specialize in whatever you want to once you really had ideally some work experience too.
Yeah, so you would say that it's actually a very good thing to actually explore more areas, right, with the master's?
Yes, I think so. I mean, you know, some people when they're 15 know exactly what they want, or 18. Most don't, and I think it's tough to force them to, you know, make such an important choice, right, at that age.
Exactly. Okay, thank you very much. So I also have a lot of questions regarding the CV. So obviously it's not only an important part during your studies, but also later on when you actually want to get an occupation, when you're choosing your occupation and get a job. So obviously you're not all in the same industries. So I wanted to ask you, what would be a good example of a CV in your industry, and actually what are you looking for? So Tanya, could you maybe answer this question?
Sure. I think for your CV, I think it's important. So I work in fashion, for example, and I think it's important for an employer to see that you can last longer than 6 months in a job. And I'm very critical about that when I see especially younger people today who jump around every 6 months or every 8 months because, you know, they may or may not like it. What Sebastian said about school, that's really where you explore. But when you're in a job, I don't think, you know, jumping every 6 months and moving from career to career or company to company is necessarily a good thing. Understand what you want to do first, and then really give yourself a year. I think it takes a year in any company to understand the culture, to understand the role, to understand what you can contribute. So I think first and foremost, when I see someone's CV, I very much look at that piece of it. That's not to say that you need to stay in a company for 10 years at the beginning of your career, but at least if you can manage a year or 2 years in a role, it's really good. And also in fashion, it depends also on which piece of the business that you would like to work in. I mean, if your goal is to be a president one day, then I think having all of the steps that get you there, from understanding the sales piece of it, to understanding the financial piece of it, the, you know, design production piece of it, the logistics piece of it, having a well-rounded CV as you grow in your career is also super important, and strategic, right? Because it also shows people, whether they're recruiters, whoever's looking at you, how your career path was and what you have to offer in that role.
Okay, but would you say that when someone finishes college and graduates, would you say that when they go somewhere and want to actually get a job, would you say that their degree is actually a very important part, as to would it be like very important to have a specific degree for your industry, or are you open for more ideas and experience, for example?
I think that goes back to the industry you work in. So depending on how much technical experience you need from that degree, I personally, I'm happy to look at someone who has their MBA or who doesn't have their MBA. You know, I don't think, obviously the education piece is extremely important, hence the reason we're all on this call today. But I don't think that, I think it varies by industry and how much of that piece you need in order to be in the industry that you're applying to. Obviously, if you're a doctor, you're an attorney, it's a different story. But I think it depends on the career. If you work in a big tech company, do you actually even need that? Because you see so many people who are creative and who have been highly successful without specific, education to that piece of their business. So I think it varies.
Right. Thank you. Also, for example, when you would see someone's CV, would you say that a perfect CV is more important, or one's ambitions and motivation towards the work? What would you say, Milena?
First, what I look in the CV has the spelling mistakes, especially if the person is young and doesn't have much to write about their careers. If you get a CV with the spelling mistakes, and that's an obvious lack of attention to details, and this is not the person who can survive working with me. So this is number one. If you're talking about the students, so people who are writing like the, CVs where you don't have much to say, right? Then it's completely fine to be honest and just say, I don't want to like pump my CV like it looks like I have 10 years of experience when I actually have none. So just write what you did at university, what interests you, and then just write why would you like to work for the company you're applying with, right? But not like just something that you copy paste from internet, but just really like why would you like to experience that? So this is what I look in the CVs, which are when I'm hiring people straight out of the university. If I'm getting the CV from somebody who has like 10 plus, 15 plus years of experience, also if they don't put their CV on 2 pages, then again, I think that they have a problem with distinguishing what's important from what's less important. And I think that everyone can write their CV on 2 pages. So because no one has more time to read pages and pages of CVs.
I understand. Eric, what would you say?
Well, I think it's really important to get noticed. So if you don't get attention, then no one will ever talk to you or interview. So I like to see something where, you get to see as just sort of normal CVs, and then something maybe as color, or something where they actually tailored it to what you're doing. Maybe, I'm in a design field, so sometimes people do animations or really creative expressions of their talent. And, I wouldn't say anyone makes a hiring decision based on a CV, right? Because until a lot of people can put anything down on paper, and that's pretty common, but it will get you to the interview. And once you're in the interview, you can really understand what the person's capabilities and gifts are, or if they're a fit or not a fit. Sometimes, it's not even just your qualifications. It's how are they going to mesh with your team and your company and your vision, and you're looking for things like that. So I think it's important to get noticed. And then once you get in the door, it's sort of up to you.
Right. So you would say that actually the interviews actually pay a lot, actually are the things that get you, that's where you get noticed, right? The interviews. Like that's where.
Yeah, that's where I think people make a hiring decision, but you have to at least get called for the interview. So I don't think it's, you don't want, it's a fine line. You don't want it to be too much of a gimmick, but you also need to get someone's attention because, again, typically there are hundreds or even 1,000 applications for every job opening, especially now it's so easy to submit on the internet. So you have to do something to stand out. Otherwise, you won't even get called.
Right. So individuality is actually very important. But regarding you guys, do you maybe remember your first CVs? For example, Sebastian? If you do, could you maybe tell us something about it?
I remember very well. I didn't have much to say because I hadn't done any work, which was the biggest challenge. So I insisted very much on, indeed, activities. I think Milena was saying that earlier, that I had done at school, internships I'd done in summertime, even that weren't necessarily related to, corporate worlds. I had worked, for example, doing volunteer work, rebuilding with a group in France, rebuilding an old castle, things like that. So I tried to show an international spirit. I tried to show who I was, even though I hadn't had, proper professional or corporate positions. The other thing to echo, I think Milena was saying earlier, I fully agree. It may seem like a superficial thing, but the important thing is to be very concise, right? Especially when you're young and you hadn't done much work, a one-pager is more than enough. You need to be concise. You need to show what results you may have had, but in a very easy to read way, because there's nothing worse than reading a complicated CV. It's very confusing, and you lose the reader's interest very rapidly.
Right. So you mentioned internships actually, and that you actually did internships. So what was it that you actually did?
Well, I mean, I had this one summer thing where I had worked as a volunteer on, reconstruction of a historic monument, which doesn't say anything about corporate world, but it is different. Most people hadn't done that, particularly as it was in Europe. At the time in the US, you didn't have that many people going, this is in the 80s, going off to Europe to do this kind of thing. But, I had worked summers at Merrill Lynch, helping stock brokers, do business development, things like that. Different types of jobs. Jobs I had done while I was in the university, working in film departments. I'm just trying to remember back that far. It's a long time ago. But yeah, I think it's important to show that you're active and that you're hungry, as opposed to sitting around on vacation doing nothing. That's something people appreciate, or employers appreciate.
Of course, I understand. Thank you. Milena, what's actually your thought? What's your opinion on internships? And did you actually also work somewhere while going to university?
When I was going into university in Serbia, which just separated from the big Yugoslavia and everything, it was like a weird time. So internships weren't there that popular, or there weren't any, unless you would like to go and pick some fruits during summer in some plantage. We didn't have many options. I studied in Belgrade in Serbia. But I think that internships are super important. And I love working with interns in my company. And I especially like interns who are pushy. And I had one young lady knocking on our doors 3 times, asking us, please, take me. And I like the approach. And she's very successful now. She's doing her master's in Spain. So I think that this is also shows the willingness. If you find a proper company, and if you can maybe grab a mentor from the company where you do internship, it can really, really help your career immensely.
Okay, thank you very much. I also have a question that actually I would maybe like to hear from all of you. What was it actually that motivated you to get into what you're doing now? So what was your inspiration, motivation? Tanya, maybe you could start with this question.
Sure. I mean, I think I've talked about this a lot, last year when I did this, so I don't want to bore anyone with my story. I think everyone else can speak. But I think for me, when I set out to go to university in Canada, I set out to be a lawyer, not by choice, because I knew I always wanted to work in fashion. So I grew up, my mother owned 2 retail stores and my parents owned a resort hotel. So I grew up in the retail business, and my inspiration was my mother, going on buying trips with her, really understanding the business from the bottom up, basically. And so I worked in her stores, during the summer, on the weekend, and having the experience of, leaving Toronto, going to New York on buying trips was a really great experience for me to understand that that was what I really wanted to do. I really wanted to work in fashion. Even though I went to university and studied political science, it also taught me what I didn't want to do. So I think for me, it was just growing up in this industry, really watching my mother, understanding how it works. And I guess I was lucky that I was able to see all of that in order for me to know at a young age that that's what I wanted to do. So it was, just part of my life.
Right. Thank you. It's interesting actually to hear how different your stories are and where your motivation came from actually. So Sebastian, what about you?
Well, I grew up in a family that did nothing at all related to what I'm doing. My parents were university professors. So I knew I didn't want to become that. But intuitively, what I always wanted to do was to work in some sort of creative field, work with creative people. In combination, that I felt very early on. In combination, I always just personally very much loved retail experiences, fashion product more specifically. And yeah, so that was in a way a dream that I didn't realize I had, but it's something I really loved. And at some point right after I finished my MBA, it was probably in my mid-20s, I realized that was something that was that would really kind of ticked all the boxes of what I wanted to do. Something that was a proper industry, but that had a very, very strong irrational and creative content to it.
All right. Thank you. Eric, what about you?
Yeah, I think I have a similar story. I grew up in a very creative family. My grandfather was a furniture maker. I grew up with a nail gun in my hand, chasing people around a shop. And I just loved creating things. And the business aspect sort of caught up, but I think I always knew I loved the work. and love to create things with mixed success, which I still have mixed success doing. And I knew I love that feeling of the creativity, the successes, the rejections. And it took a little while for me to sort of understand the business component of it. But, you know, one thing I think is if you love what you do, it's, you know, an overused phrase, but you're not really working. You spend so much time at work, especially when you're starting out. And I don't care what the industry is. It could be the restaurant industry or anything. You're going to spend a lot of hours, if you really care about it, doing it. So if you really don't enjoy the work, it's going to be a difficult experience. You probably will be less successful at it. So for me, the arc was, I knew I wanted to do something creative. I wasn't exactly sure. And, you know, my career has taken a lot of different twists and turns through product design and furniture. But that basis of knowing that I love the work, I think was really important. Okay,
thank you very much. And what about you, Milena?
I just wanted to say something, continue on what Eric was saying, which is like great that you are, especially when you're young, you are spending a lot of time at work and you need to love what you're working. Something that I noticed in the new candidates who are coming are saying like, what is my working hours? And like, what about work-life balance in the company, etc. First, for the record, we are not torturing everybody and asking for the late shifts, but I think that approach is very wrong. I don't remember sleeping during my 20s. I just know that I was like pushing and hustling and I was trying to be the best and learn as much as I can. So first you work, then you balance, as one friend of mine would say. So I think this is very important for the young people who are starting out, that if they don't have that passion who are going to put them through the job to work nonstop, it's going to be very hard for them to, you know, to succeed.
Right, thank you. So basically, you have to be obviously very ambitious towards the area you want to actually be in for the rest of your life.
Well, ambitious, but sorry for interruption. Like, what is ambition? Like, you need to really love what you're doing. Otherwise, ambition is going to. And what is ambition for me or for you, right? So, ambition is a different thing. So, not everybody is like born leaders, and it's fine if you don't want to be a leader. You just want to be ambitious in your own way.
Of course, yeah. But basically, also you have to be very passionate about it and hardworking, obviously. So also regarding the hard work, so all of you are you actually have the occupations many people dream of, and a lot of people actually look up to you. So when you were going into actually the whole business and your occupations, did you ever actually make some big risk that eventually helped you actually improve? Not only maybe in business, but also like yourself, did you improve while you made some big risk in your life? For example, maybe Sebastian?
I think the biggest risk actually was the one, and probably the best thing I ever did. The biggest risk I ever took was the best thing I did career-wise, was that I left, you know, the first part of my career, first 5-6 years, I was management consultant, and which was very comfortable, nice salary and secure job, but I actually hated it. And I had the opportunity to take a huge risk and help a friend of mine who was a prominent fashion designer create his own label. And that was a huge risk because there was no money. We had to create everything literally from scratch. And as I said earlier, I knew that I loved the idea of being in fashion, retail, working with creatives. And I had an opportunity to take this risk and start up a fashion label, which is a very, very tough thing, to put it lightly. And thanks to taking that risk, which turned out business-wise 2 or 3 years later not to be a successful company, it was the best thing I ever did, because it got me into an industry that I love, where I still am 20 years later, or 25.
Of course, yeah. So risks are definitely actually significant to thrive. Tanya, did you actually make any big risk that actually changed you and helped you in any way and improved you?
It's funny because this sounds like a totally set up question for me today, and I'll tell you why. My big risk was moving from Canada to New York. And I moved to New York on January 22nd, 2001. So today's my 20th anniversary of actually living in New York, which is crazy. I didn't realize that until I looked at the date. So, I mean, yeah, like exactly what Sebastian said. I could have been comfortable working in Toronto, working for my mother, you know, where life is easy and Canada's much more laid back, a slower pace. And you know, I knew in my 20s that I really wanted to do something in fashion that was bigger than just Canada on a global stage. And so I begged to move to New York. I got to New York, and, you know, moving, some people may think that, okay, it's not that big of a deal. You're moving from a, you know, English-speaking country to another English-speaking country. But New York is like its own country in itself, right? I mean, when Milena talked about working or, you know, never sleeping, I didn't sleep in my 20s. I don't know if I slept in my 30s either. And, you know, you just have to hustle and you have to be better and you have to work harder because it's a whole different level. And so I think for me, moving to New York, and thank God I had the foresight in my 20s to do that because I wouldn't be where I am today, just puts you on a whole different trajectory. And it was a huge risk because, like Sebastian, I could have been comfortable and happy and stayed in my world in Canada. But I came to New York, and I've been lucky enough to work for some really great brands as a result of that.
Right. Thank you very much. So besides risks, I would say that everyone has obviously their ups and downs, and falls are a part of the human nature. And actually they make us, in most cases, stronger and much wiser. So did any of you actually have some significant, let's say, fall that actually made you more independent and stronger? Eric, could you maybe answer this question?
Sure. Well, you know, I think in you know, certain industries, you have almost 100% success rate, right? If you're a doctor and you mess up a surgery, you're probably going to be not a doctor anymore. If you're creative, you know, we fail every day. We work on something for 6 months, show it to someone says, I don't like it. And you have to just keep moving forward. So it's a little bit of a different mentality where you have to believe in yourself and believe in the work. But, you know, one of the, you know, I have several big failures. One of the ones that sort of sticks out in my mind is I started a eco furniture factory in North Carolina in, you know, around 2005, and it was going great. It was using European craftsman techniques with recycled steel and reclaimed wood and everything eco, and we had a huge amount of success early on because the idea was resonating with you know, big contracts, commercial projects. Ended up in 2007, the economy turned, and unfortunately, that, you know, we couldn't sustain the factory, went out of business, and that was a very challenging time because so many people had left really good jobs to come work for that factory, and you know, just the human element of that. It's not just about business. Seeing that, you know, sometimes failures are, you know, you contribute to them, but also there's a global environment. There's so many factors that you can't control. So just having the resiliency to sort of continue on and not be discouraged by it, because failures really are inevitable on different scales.
Thank you very much. That's a very interesting story, actually. And Milena, did you maybe have so many fall that shaped you into a better person and actually strengthen your career?
This is now going to sound very, like, I don't know, pretentious. I didn't have any falls in my career, but I had struggles, of course. Like, I was taking risks. I changed companies. Like, I had my own company. It was very hard to leave my own company. Right after the university, with two friends, we formed our own outsourcing company. That time, you know, you would be able to build very small website for someone and earn tens of thousands of dollars. That were like early 2000s. But I had, of course, struggles, which made me stronger. So after the 8 years of having that company, one other American company asked me to work for them, which were just started growing. I didn't know much about stuff they were doing. It was Google. They were very small at that time, and it was hard for me to jump. I was 33, I think. I jumped for the first time to the corporate life. So being entrepreneur, coming to the corporate life, and there is a lot of consultants and people who know how to use PowerPoint properly. I felt very like weird in these meetings that I didn't know the corporate lingo and everything. So I had to learn even more. I had struggles because I changed countries. I moved to Greece, then I moved to Turkey. So, you know, learning new language when you're 40 is really, really hard. So this is something but you constantly learn, and that makes you stronger. So you cannot give up, even if it's hard.
Thank you. I just remembered, you actually reminded me, when you were going into university, did you actually have any professional guiding, such as career paths, or did you have to do it only by yourself? Milena?
It's a great question. I didn't have any. And I'm always saying it would be so great if I had a mentor or any counseling, because like learning on your own mistakes is always the most expensive thing. It's much better if you have somebody to guide you. So if you find somebody who can be your mentor, even like for like 2 hours a month, you can just call, or you have something like career paths where you can hear the other people and how they were doing. It can be a shortcut to your career. So I'm very sorry that something like this didn't exist when I was at my university.
Okay. Did maybe any of you have some professional guiding? Maybe Sebastian?
We did at the time, but you know, again, since I didn't really know what I wanted to do, I wasn't personally necessarily making great use of that actively, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, I mean, our school did have that. Again, I went to a liberal arts college, which wasn't, you know, when I did MBA studies, there was a lot more of that, of course, but that's master's level, it's different. And, you know, you go to a school like that for purely professional reasons, so it's a different story.
But would you say that it was actually helpful? Is it helpful to have some professional guiding?
No, I think it's very helpful. In my specific case, you know, I shaped my first jobs and everything on my own through content. So I think guidance is useful, absolutely. Some schools are better structured for that than others, with career days, with direct contact, you know, with prospective employers, especially business schools. And that's extremely helpful.
Right, thank you. I would agree with you, definitely. So as I already mentioned before, each one of you has achieved various very impressive, actually, things through your careers. And what I wanted to ask you is that, would you actually agree? Many people say that the luck factor is actually a very important thing in life, and especially when actually applying to a job. Would you say that pure luck actually is important and that it is really a thing? For example, Eric.
You always want to have luck. You know, I think luck's a good thing to have. But, you know, truthfully, you know, if you think about, you know, most things are, you know, your own capabilities, as well as just not being discouraged. It's how you deal with different situations. So, you know, you can never be too attached to one outcome, right? It's over. You know, you want to say at the end of 6 months, I'm in a better place than I was, or what did I learn from those 6 months or a year later? Because, you know, really how you deal with those situations which you can't control. There's going to be ups, downs. So I guess luck has something to do with it, but also, you know, not viewing any outcome as final. You know, you can continue to adapt, you can continue to change. And if you have that mindset, you can overcome adversity. Hopefully you have little adversity, hopefully mostly success, but as long as you keep moving forward and learning from everything, you know, I've certainly learned more from my failures than my successes in many cases. So I think that you can control a lot of it and make luck less important.
Thank you very much. I also wanted to ask you, so obviously in modern times, everyone is very competitive in all of the developing industries. And I wanted to ask you what you think about networks and acquaintances. Would you say that networks are a very important thing today? Tanya, what would you say?
I do. I think networks are hugely important. And I think that you develop them, you know, at a younger age through school, through university. And I think in your career, you obviously develop them through business. So having a network is super important because, you know, that way people, if you don't know the person necessarily directly, then someone you've worked with in the past may know them. And so I do think that networking is important because it also keeps you top of mind for other career opportunities or for just networking and understanding what other people, for example, because I work in the fashion industry, what other people in the fashion industry are doing. So you can also learn, obviously, from your network, but you can also share information, and it just makes you stronger, kind of like a family. If you have a family, which is your network at home, then, you know, those people are there to help support you and ask advice. And it's just I think it's a very positive thing in personal and professional.
I definitely agree. Milena, what's your approach to networks? Would you agree with what Tanya said?
Absolutely, 100%. So all the time network, of course, like, I think that this is something that has to come naturally, right? Because now there are people who are like, for example, adding me on the various social networks, etc., which is like really feels like intrusion. So I think that people, whenever they, so one thing is like positively networking and being open to network and meet new people, etc. And the other is to violate people's privacy, right? So when you send somebody LinkedIn request or something, just think, would you do the same if you saw the person like on the street and just like poke him on the, or her on the shoulder and say, hey, do you want to be my friend? So what I want to say, like, it has to be real. You have to have a reason to know people, and from your network, you can really profit in the future.
Okay, thank you very much. What I also wanted to ask you, so obviously all of you had to go through a very difficult and challenging path to get where you are today. What is it that you would actually say to yourself if you could go back in time, like all the way back before you actually even started working? So right before you actually applied to a job, what would you actually say to yourself from today's point of view you have on the world and actually life in general? Sebastian, could you maybe answer this?
I mean, I suppose there's many things. I wouldn't really know where to start. If the question is whether I would necessarily go back and make some significant changes about the way I approached career or the path I took, I don't think I would make any changes necessarily, because I was happy with the result, right? Or the result in the sense of where I ended up and the kind of work I'm doing. So, and there's many ways to get there. So my way isn't necessarily the only, absolutely not the only way or necessarily the right way. But in that sense, I wouldn't go back and make major changes. I mean, knowing the industry that I'm in, knowing the kind of skills you need, if I had known precisely what I was doing, I probably would have taken in undergraduate maybe some additional courses in some fields that I didn't even touch, things like that.
Right.
Certainly what I would have told myself, and it was the same thing my mother was telling me at the time that I found very boring, but was to appreciate the moment that it's an extraordinary luxury to, be able to study and to explore all these different fields without having the pressure of, just working and what have you. And that's absolutely true. The more I look back on it, the more I see that that's true.
Right. Thank you very much. What about you, Tanya? Would you actually make any changes? Would you do anything differently, or what would you actually say to yourself?
I totally agree with what Sebastian said. I think really I wouldn't change anything, because I think changing to exactly what Sebastian said, then it wouldn't necessarily put me where I am today. I have no regrets for what I've done in terms of my career, where I've worked and how hard I worked or haven't worked. And I think that, and learning how to appreciate it more, other than now, it's kind of a catch-22, learning to appreciate it more when you're at a certain age and you look back and you say, wow, I can't believe I did all of that. But I think the beauty of being in your 20s and your 30s is that you just have this vision of go, go, go. And so you're just living in the moment and trying to do what you can do to continue to advance your career. So you don't have the luxury of sitting and enjoying it as much. So I agree with that piece of it. But from a career perspective, I'm not sure that I would have done anything differently. I mean, I think moving to the US was the right thing for me in particular. I think the path that I took and what I've learned so far, I mean, can everyone be smarter and better? And of course, and maybe there were different jobs I should have taken and not, worked at certain places, but I don't know that. So today I'm happy, and maybe if you talk to me in another 5 years, it's a different story. But right now I'm happy with the decisions I've made.
Okay, thank you. And Eric, what is your approach to this? Would you actually make some changes, or would you leave everything as it is?
Well, I agree with what everyone else said. I think that, the path took us here. And so I wouldn't change anything. Obviously, in individual situations, you could have handled things better. But, one thing I think I would say is when something happens, good or bad, you do look back after 5 years, as she said. And sometimes you think something was great and it ended up not being so great in the moment, or something seemed like a setback or could have been better. And then 5 years later, you're actually, wow, that was actually really lucky because one door closed, another opened. So trying to keep that perspective, I think it's easier at this stage in my life and career to have a little perspective and say, let's see what happens. Where when you're younger and starting out, you could say, you can be in the moment and think something's a disaster or a great success. And ultimately, I would just say to myself, let's see in 5 years how it works out.
Okay, thank you very much for this. Actually, what you kind of said now connects to the question I have for all of you. Basically, what advice would you give to students in general, but especially to students who are not certain what they want to do later on and they have to undergo this process soon or even now? So what advice would you give us? We can start with maybe Milena.
So first make a list. What are the things, if you really have no idea what you want to do, just make a list of the things you really hate and you really love to do. And then try to find there, like whatever doesn't exhaust you too much. That means that this is the path where you're going to go. I don't know. I really early understood what I want to do. So I don't know. I didn't have this problem, but I'm sure that like the things that you love exhaust you less. And this goes through the whole life. It doesn't change in your 30s or 40s.
Right. Thank you very much. Sebastian, what about you? What advice would you give?
Not unlike what Milena said. You know, the most important, first of all, you shouldn't feel pressure about not knowing what you want to do when you're in your 20s. Because I think I'm always in awe of people who know for sure what they want to do. I find that very impressive, and you know, I think most people don't know what they want to do, and I think it's very important to explore and to have different experiences. It makes you stronger in whatever specific field you choose later on. So I think, you know, the most important thing is, you know, I suppose really just to follow your heart, do what you love, and if you do what you love, you'll be good at it, most likely.
Thank you very much. Eric, what would you say?
Yeah, I would echo what everyone said. I think, again, like I said earlier, if you love what you do, you know, that makes the work you better at it, and it makes it easier to be in that career. If you don't know what you want to do, you know, you can learn a lot by getting into an industry you think you're interested in, and you may end up hating it, but that's actually positive because now you know that wasn't for you. And what I would say also is try to get as much exposure to the overall business operations of whatever company you are, or as many fields or aspects of it, because that can serve you no matter what you end up doing. Everyone should understand how a business operates and works. There might be relationships you can build that you could take to another industry. So whatever you end up doing, you should hopefully, especially a first job, it should give you some skills or some exposure to industry that will be valuable no matter what you end up doing.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, Tanya.
I agree with what everyone said. I think the only thing I would add is if you have the opportunity when you're in university or after university to travel, I think it's super important. I think we can all get lost in our own little worlds, and then, you know, you get older and then you finally start to travel and you visit different countries and different cultures. And I think by doing that, you also see what else there is in the world. The world's a very small place today, based on, you know, how we're all connected. And I think by having the opportunity, and I'm lucky that my parents always traveled with us, that just seeing different things and understanding what else is out there, that you don't necessarily have to grow up in Canada and spend, you know, the rest of your life being a hockey player or whatever it is. I'm being very literal right now. But my point is that there's so much, and today, especially with, you know, the access that we have to so many different things, I think learning about different cultures and spending time in other countries also gives you the opportunity to see things from a different point of view, where you may see other opportunities from a career standpoint. So I think travel is, for me, a huge aspect of that piece of it.
I would definitely agree. I think that this is actually the perfect question to kind of conclude the whole panel. From the students' point of view, I think all of your responses really helped kind of look at the whole situation and applying to universities, jobs, and all of that. Actually, I think you all kind of opened my eyes and maybe more open-minded toward the process. So I'm definitely very thankful for that. And thank you very much. I really appreciate it, as I think will all the students who will be watching this. It was really a pleasure talking to you guys, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you all. It's now time to take a little short break. When we come back, we have more very interesting things coming. A personal success story that started with a refugee washing dishes in a strange country that led to him being a millionaire. Also, we have a final panel, the one where we will hear what students have to say about career paths. So make sure you join us right after this. Welcome back. Our next lecture is called Unlimited Thinking. And when it comes to the person behind it, well, he really is a proof what your determination and imagination can do. He came to Germany 40 years ago as a refugee from Iran with nothing but dreams. Today, he owns one of the biggest fitness studio chains in Germany with more than 2,000 employees. Wow. Please welcome Jakob Fatih.
Dobar dan, prijatelji. Ja sam Jakob Fatih, ja sam Iranac, imam 45 godina. Imam 2 sina, stara 2 i 13. Ja sam živio u Hrvatsku između 87. do 89. sa 13 godina. You guys probably ask yourself, what a Persian guy doing in Croatian at age of 13 and speaks Croatian after this long term. And my story started actually in Iran. I was born in Tehran in a normal situated family. My father was back to Shah's regime, a police officer, and my mother was a housewife. So I went to school like every normal child, and because of situation of my father, we traveled to, at this time, Yugoslavia, today Croatia, for 2.5 years. My father, after his police career, studied philosophy and history, and he graduated PhD, and later on he was professor at Tehran University. So I had a chance to go to Croatia, exactly to Zagreb, and I went to school, Matematička škola. You probably know where the Matematička škola is, and I lived in different places in Zagreb, in Černomerec, Dubrava, in Pantovčak, and it was a great time. It was like huge time in my life, having chance to get out of the country, staying for a long term in very different country, and learn the language. So after that, we came back. I mean, it was short before the war started in Yugoslavia, and I went back to Iran, started to work as a translator for for Croatian and Persian language. And it was really easy to get jobs in this area, because there were rare people in Iran who spoke Croatian at this time. So I had a lot of contact to different engineers, different companies, Ivo Lora Ribar or Rade Končar from Zagreb. And I worked as attaché, as translator for engineers that came to Iran to install different factories, to educate the people in different productions. And it was a great time. I went to school. I could earn a very good money at this age, and it was a huge chance to don't forget the beautiful Croatian language. It was Croatia was like my first, second homeland. I learned my first girlfriend. No, I met my first girlfriend in Croatia, Mirela, and I started to learn the first things about business, about different things in Croatia. I came back to Iran, and it was always a great like curiosity to know about business and to make money from everything I could. I start at age of 8 years, my first business. I have to tell the short story about my lemonade that my mother always made in Iran. It was like a mix of mint, cucumber, chia seeds, water, lime, and a bit of honey. And I always invited the whole neighborhood, the kids, to playing football, and we played football in a very warm, like, afternoon time. And after football, I brought a huge, like, pot of full of this lemonade that I made before, and I start to sell glass-wise to my friends. And this was my first like idea to make some money out of a very, very simple idea. So I graduate high school, I start to study pharmacy in Iran, and I worked at the same time as a translator for a lot of engineers and companies. And I met a guy, his name was Miho Pušić. He was like expert for producing etong. This is like very light concrete blocks, and they installed a factory in Iran. And suddenly he asked me, "Hey, Jakobe, did you read the book Satanic Person?" I told, no, I didn't. And I wouldn't, because it was a huge taboo in Iran to read this book. I don't know if you know about this book. This was a book about Islam and the prophet of Islam, Muhammad. And it was a huge struggle in Iran because of this book, because at this time the religious leader of Iran, Khomeini, put money on head of Salman Rushdie, the guy who wrote this book. And he told me, "Hey, you know, next time I'm coming to Iran, I'm gonna bring you the book and you can read it. I mean, you know, in Croatian, and nobody gonna understand it." And I told him, yeah, I was curious, and he brought the book. I read the book, and I just told always to my colleagues at the university about the book and what was the book about. And at some stage, couple friends of mine asked me, "Hey, come on, you can translate this book and write it down and just maybe sell it." And this was a mistake, and at the same time, I think one of my luckiest accidents of my life. I read the book, I translated, I wrote it down. I add some stuff by myself to the book to make it more interesting, and I start to sell that book at university. So it didn't take a lot of time. At this time, I can remember that I came home and my mother told me, "Hey, Jacob, what did you do again? So like, you made a trouble." So yeah, I had a trouble with Iranian government, or the intelligence service of Iranian government, and I had to leave the country over the night, through a very, very complicated way. hiding me for 3 months north of Iran, then getting to a truck, driving 30 hours to the border of Iran and Turkey at this time, passing the border, staying 3 months in Turkey, and I got, after 3 months, my false Croatian documents, passport, credit card, and driving license, and I flew from Turkey to Paris, and from Paris by train to Essen, the place that I'm leaving now. I had to do this because otherwise I wouldn't know what would happen in Iran at this time. This book and the political situation in Iran and my religious background. My mother was Jewish, and it could happen anything, and so it was necessary to leave the country to save my life. At the beginning, it was really hard, but I think it was the luckiest accident of my life. I applied as a refugee in Germany, and I got the refugee after 6 months. I started to learn the next language, German, and I started actually to build up the new life in Germany. First of all, I went to language school, and at this time I tried to earn money to organize my life, so I had to do a lot of different jobs, which I think it was even a very beneficial situation for me, because in the past I had real, comfortable life in my family, my parents' home, and this was like making me going through some complete unknown situation at this time for me. I tried to continue my pharmacy education, and I was always very sport interested guy. I started at 13 to go to box gym. I played football, and the first contact to a social and to a community was actually fitness gym that I signed the contract it was 1998, in December 1998, after a month arriving in Germany. So I went to the gym. I found a lot of friends, and at this time, 6 months later, the gym started to offer a trainer license course that that all members could get it for a discounted price. And I was thinking like, hey, you're doing any jobs now? You're a waiter in a restaurant. I go to the week market and sell fish. I danced in a club. I mean, everything I could earn a couple of dollars. So I just thought, okay, maybe you make the trainer license and start to make your hobby to a job. And this was a huge opener in my life too. I got my license, and I applied to a fitness chain company at this time that was in a very, very beginning of their expansion in Germany. And I applied, got the job at year 2000. From 2000 to 2001, 2004, I worked as an employee for this company, and I started as like part-time trainer. Afterwards, I was gym manager, area manager, and I was like 1 year, 1.5 general manager of the company for whole Germany. It was a huge and very fast career in my situation, this was like the beginning of I fell in love with the industry. This was my like complete wish, hobby, job, you know, sports, meeting people, always meeting new people, and then the huge expansion that I learned at this time, how to do, how to negotiate properties, how to negotiate the lease contracts, how to employ the people, marketing, everything in an absolutely new country with new language. And this was the the greatest university you could ever visit, this 4 years. But I was hugely ambitious to make my own business. Always try to think about a way to create something or to do something new. And 2004 was the time I quit the job at my like employee job, and I established my first company in real estate business. So why real estate? Because I was beside many other areas and divisions that I worked for the company, I was responsible for properties and real estate business. So I learned a lot about real estate, and I had always connection to real estate because my grandpa in Iran was a great entrepreneur, and he had a lot of relation to real estate. And always, as a child, he told me, "Hey, you have to buy earth. This is important. You have to buy sites. This is something that has always value." So I established the company with a German partner, and we did a huge investment between 2004 and 2007. During my work for at this time, at employee time, I had always different idea, and I had an idea about new fitness concept too for Germany at 2003, and I always carried that with me, and I told, okay, it is not the right time, I don't have enough money to do it. And at 2007 I exited from my real estate company, and I just decided to start to found 2 other businesses. First of all, it was YT, Young Talent Industries, which I'm talking later about it, and FedEx. After exiting from my real estate company, which I earned like 2 million euros, I had the foundation for my new ideas. So I told myself, come on, you're gonna get the fitness idea out of the box. I had a name, I had an idea, the concept, the whole business plan, and you started. So it was 2007. It takes like 2 years till I found the first real estate which I could use for FedEx. It's called FedEx, and it was actually very similar to existing model at this time, budget concept with a new touch of feminine, atmosphere, and it was a bit different, cheaper, and better. So I start at 2009 and opened up the first gym. It was November of 2009. Within 10 years, we were able to open up 83 gyms. We collect like 800,000 members. And at 2019, I did the exit at this company too, because we had big family investors as a partner in this company, and we decided to go different way because they had the bigger part of the company, and I had the bigger ideas that I was actually more passionate to do this. So at 2019, at actually value of 500 million euros, I did the exit from Webex, and I want to go again back to 2006 at the time that I found the company today YT. At this time we called it Sponsory. And this was like initial idea for Crealize, the new company, and my absolutely dream and vision for the future. Because I met my partner today, Markus Flossmann, at my job at this time in the fitness company that I worked for. And the first time we met, we talked, hey, we gotta do something together, we have to found something. And at 2006, we established Sponsory.com. It was just a platform to getting extreme athletes and sponsors together. What for? Sponsory.com. It was successful. We got like 30,000 unique users at the very, very short time. And we got 4 million of clicks each day, but we didn't know how to earn some money out of it. So we start to make up like our own hobby again, to new idea, to bring a product. We were both mountain bikers, downhill bikers. So we told, come on, we have small or middle size of community of extreme athletes, or many of them related to bike industry. And we started to think about bringing a dirt bike, a very simple bike. If you are familiar to biking business, you know that, for 150 bikes, and we put it on our, at this time, platform Sponsory.com with very good price, high quality, and we had a real huge surprise at this time. The bikes were sold out in within 10 days. And it was the start of YT, the Young Talent Industries, because our passion and our mission was to produce really competitive and competition ready bikes for a small price for young talent. And we start the business. My partner worked as an employee in a huge company. I had my own business in real estate. And at some stage, we had to put more focus on this idea. And I talked at this time to my partner, Marcus Flossman. I told him, Marcus, if you don't move on and quit your job and just put your complete focus on this, on our baby, it's going to nowhere, and it's gonna go to be a just hobby. And at this time, he was like, well, I don't know, I have the secure job, I have my salary, I don't have to care about, you know, things that as entrepreneur you have to care about. And I told him, come on, man, this has a huge potential. And I know the discussion with his wife at this time, she was really cautious and told us, no, you can't do it. But I convinced him at this time to move on and like completely staying for YT and doing the business. Today, YT counts to one of the most non-gravity biking companies in the world. We are actually always in a ranking between first and third place. We're competing with Santa Cruz, Specialized, Trek, all huge companies, and this within 10 years. So, and it was like, this was like initial point for me to tell, wow, it's really cool to found a company by yourself and bring it to a huge valuation, make it big. But it would be much cooler to empower other people to start their own business. So I had the idea, and I had always the many talks to many people who said, I have this idea and another idea, and they were not brave enough and not ready enough to realize it too. So creation and realization was two different things for me always. I told, hey, you have many ideas, but you know, if you don't bring it to a product or to a reality, it doesn't care nobody. And from these two words, it become the word crealize. This is a combination of two words, and this is actually the main and the important point. Crealize is for me the meaning of entrepreneurship. And it was like, at this time I had just an idea, and it would be great to get talents and empower them to found a company and bring them and make them to an entrepreneur. I didn't have any plan how and in which way, and am I a business angel, VC? No, I didn't like it. I wanted to be a company creator, empower a family of founders. And but I had my own business at FedEx. It was like 2010 that I talked about this idea to a couple of people, and I choose the name. I registered the name for branding, Crealize. I reserved at this time the domain crealize.com and put it in a box again and just wait for the right moment. And at 2014, I had a talk to my partner today, David Ewald, and he was a marketing guy employed in Hamburg at Scholz & Friends, very big advertising company in Germany. And I told him about my idea. And it was again to convincing someone to give up his very secure and safe job and starting a new business and a new journey. And it took me a lot of time to convince him, but at some stage he told, yes, it is a great idea, and I quit my job and come back to Essen, and we start together Crealize, and we founded Crealize at 2015, which we try to realize our own idea and put entrepreneurs on idea and bring it on to reality. After like 15 years of entrepreneurship and experience in founding companies, selling them, starting a new business, start the idea Crealize. Crealize, the combination of two words, creation and realization, was for me always the essence of entrepreneurship. And I was always like thinking about entrepreneurship different way, because focusing money, which I always focused in younger age, was not the right way. I always learned that if you do something passionate, if you do something with heart, and if you follow a vision, earning money and being successful is like a very logical consequence. So you can't even get unsuccessful if you are enough ambitious, you have a vision, and you are a hard worker. So it was more about leaving marks, doing something that changes in some way our world. So maybe for you, this is the logo of Crealize, and leaving marks is our claim, which I'm very proud of. And we're trying. We started at 2015, and we are hosting like 15 ventures in our home, and we are trying to find talents who are cautious, who needs some support, and the first like push to make them to founders, and to enable them and to develop them to entrepreneurs. This is what Crealize today do, and we are very proud of this. And I think there are a lot of dečkis and djevojka in Croatian who are talented enough, who are even ambitious enough to start their business. And my like really warm appeal and to everybody to look at our homepage, to send your idea, to pitch at Crealize your company, and we would be grateful to share our opinion to your ideas and to your concepts, and even to enable you to start your own business or to grow up and to grow your business. Hey fellows, what I learned in the past 22, 23 years is just life is like a game. You have to play. You have to play the game. Otherwise, you're gonna be loser, or you stay at one stage. You have to accept the accident. the happenings in your life, and you have to make your path. I just learned something, what is, you know, everybody talk out there, every motivational coach, every brand. But what I've really experienced is that impossible is a liar. There is nothing in our life you're not able to do. You gotta just work for it. You have to be passionate, you have to be resistance, and you have to just go on. You fall, you stand up again. You have to think big, exponentially, important. Everybody is small, start very small, but you have to think big, think unlimited. This is what I learned in my life as a refugee coming to Germany, not speaking one word German, learning German and going through this way. This is absolutely, it was really privilege, and it's taught me a lot of lessons in my life, which I'm trying to give to people, to founders, to friends, to colleagues, to the world that I have around me, to just spread up this emotions, these learnings, and the whole story. So I would tell, I'm not there. Unfortunately, we can't do it physically, but I'm sure that this weird and this surreal days gonna pass away, and we're gonna have a very, very bright days again. Nowadays, we are facing to a very, very unreal situation for the whole humanity. But I think we're going to pass through it and getting stronger and stronger. And the people who are always positive and think first positively, who have imagination for the future, are going to grow in these times. Let us together be the ones that grow and not fail. Let us be the ones who thinks exponentially bigger and bigger, and let us leaving great marks on our great world. Tako, prijatelji, hvala najljepše za šansu. Živjeli, Bog, hvala najljepše.
Thank you, Mr. Fatih. Your story is truly, truly inspirational. We've come to our last segment of the day, and it's our third and final panel. This panel is dedicated to our students. They are Jelena Maras, IE Business School, Madrid; Brin Mirzel-Oberts, European School of Management and Technology, Berlin; Ottavia Pomini, graduate of Gemological Institute of America in London; and Tin Vojnovic, master student at SDA Bocconi, Milan.
Okay, hi guys. How are you?
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Okay, once again, I already announced you, but I'm gonna say hi, Jelena, Brin, Ottavia, and Tin. It's so lovely to have you all in one place, and unfortunately not being able to see each other face to face. But hey, we're gonna do that in 2022, hopefully, right? Hopefully, yes. Okay, so the first question, obviously, and this can go actually for all of you. Why did you decide to continue your education and your life basically abroad? Team, you want to start?
Sure, why not? Well, after studying a bachelor program at ZŠEM in Croatia, I thought going abroad would significantly contribute to personal development, foreign language skills, as well as establishing social connections that might last for a lifetime. And I think I was right, it really did broaden my horizon. And I think that most of people don't really know what they're missing until they take the step forward and just get out of their comfort zone.
I love that answer. Brin?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think education abroad really is a priceless opportunity, and it is an experience. The reason why I went initially was because of my high school education in an international school. It was kind of expected of me. But since then, I completed a bachelor's in the UK, and then I had a year break, and I decided to continue my international schooling in Berlin. So kind of this decision was made a bit more knowledgeably. And what made me make it is basically this idea of meeting new people and changing the way I think. I think that's kind of priceless, and that's really what you get with international schooling.
How did you know, Brin, which school you want to go to, what direction you want to take? Can you tell us a bit about the process?
That's a funny story. I think initially, again, I didn't really know where I wanted to go during my bachelor's. It's really important that that's something that you think about, but unfortunately from my end, it's not really what happened. So I didn't put a lot of thought into it initially. I did something that, well, my parents kind of are into, which is marketing. So I finished my initial course in marketing, and then moving on to my master's, I put a lot more thought and effort into what I really am interested in, which is finance. And this is something that I definitely kind of got to with the help of Career Paths and with the help of my lovely mentor, Josipa, who helped me through the way. And it's definitely something that's important, and you should put time into it before you kind of decide where you want to go.
It's a huge decision because it can influence the rest of your life. Yelena, what about you? How can you tell me a bit about the process that you had to take before choosing where to go and what to do?
So actually, this was also a funny story because I wanted to go to study in Europe, but I was not sure where. So I applied many universities, so in Europe, but then in the end, I knew that I wanted to go to Spain, to Madrid, and that is what Career Paths recognized, that I'm in love with Madrid and that I want to continue my studies here. So I was leading towards here. And in the end, I found IE University, which is an excellent university. And I applied here. I created my CV and motivational letter with the help of Josipa. And in the end, I'm finally here.
Any regrets, Yelena?
No, there are not any regrets because I think this is an amazing experience, and I would recommend it to everybody because you cannot experience this if you stay in your country. You have to go abroad to really feel it.
And actually, that is the next topic that we will be discussing. But first, Ottavia, speaking of, I had my future planned, but then I changed my mind. And Ottavia, your story is very interesting as well. You had a change of heart and you made it work.
Yeah, because I was studying public relation in Milan at Ulm University, and I was fine. I was convinced that I'm gonna study in Italy and I'm gonna finish my studies in Italy. But at a certain point, I was always a person who loves traveling. I did a lot of summer courses in New York, and so I felt ready to go abroad. So I contacted Career Path, and they helped me a lot through all the process. And I did an internship at Vernier, it's a high-end jewelry brand, and it was amazing. And Career Path helped me a lot, and they were really amazing. And thanks to them, I discovered my true passion for jewelry, because now I'm a gemologist, and so here in London. And I continued to studying in London because unfortunately in Italy, there's no Gemological Institute of America, the branch. So I decided to move to London. So I experienced New York for 4 years, because in the end, I stayed 4 years in New York. And then now I'm here in London. And now I'm starting my jewelry line soon, hopefully. So.
Well, if you want me to wear your jewelry
really
the next time that we do career paths, feel free to ask. I'm gonna do it for you. I'm not gonna say no. Well, as we mentioned earlier, diamonds are girls' best friends. So I'm glad that you're doing what you love to do, which is most important. But you said several times as well as Bryn and Jelena, of course, career paths helped you. In which way? Is it advice on what you should do when you decided that maybe I want to try something else? Or is it basically information and forms that you have to fill out?
No, it's more than that, because they literally drove me and they let find me my path, because it was a lot of phone calls. It was a long process, and it was really emotional. And also I said to them, please find me an internship, whatever. So I was into fashion, and so they first I was supposed to go to agency to do the Bucharest, but then they found last minute Vernier that was more for me, I think, because I love luxury, I love I mean that kind of environment. And so I did an interview with them. Giorgio and Dolly helped me with the cover letter, with the CV, and now I'm using that the structure of that CV for my applications now for my jobs. And it was a really, really great lesson for me, and working with them.
Okay, amazing, amazing story, amazing experience. Thank you so much, Ottavia. For now, Tin, as Jelena opened the topic of international experience and opportunities, can you tell me, can you compare that international experience you're at Bocconi with opportunities and knowledge that you could get if you stayed in your country?
Well, I think that's a bit tough questions. Well, certainly I wouldn't be as open-minded as I am today. I think I wouldn't expose myself to multiple opportunities, which led to great results and also people that I've met. And that's another very important thing, networking. I think in the end, it all comes down to networking. And I'd really say that people are true power and source of knowledge, especially in international recognized universities with lots of cultures. I think it does enable you to develop progressive mindset, which is absolutely necessary in constantly changing world that we have today.
Okay, Bryn, what about you in comparison to staying in, I don't know, you went to school everywhere. I mean, can you imagine your life at one address?
I think Tin said it the best way. Honestly, I don't know what I could say if either case is better than the other. I don't know. I think they're different. I couldn't imagine my life on one address just because it's something that wasn't planned from the beginning. It's not something that was in my mind at the beginning, but I certainly understand why people do stay in their own kind of zone, in their own comfort place. And that's fine. It's just a bit of a different scenario. Personally, I would encourage people, if they have the opportunity, because most of the time, if you don't have the opportunity to go abroad, generally you won't even go. But if you do have the opportunity, then take it. You have this opportunity, like Tin said, to diversify. You get to grow in a different environment. And at least in my case, I believe that, let's say, the first year or 2 years overseas or somewhere that's not at home is really important, because you kind of grow as a person. You move out of your comfort zone, and this is the main takeaway that you get when you leave your home. It's this growth, you know, and you're never going to experience that if you stay where you are now. Even if, you know, you have a job where you are now, you have a good university where you are now, you're never going to be able to experience that full length of leaving your comfort zone if you don't actually leave, you know. So that would be my takeaway from it.
Good. Yelena, what about you?
So, yeah, I would also agree that if you have an opportunity to go abroad, that you should take it and that you should go, because that's a one-time opportunity. And also, I would agree that you cannot experience something in your home country. Like if you stay to live where you lived for the last 18 years, you cannot have the same experience as you would have when you go outside. You meet new people. The networking is the key, because the international surrounding is also really important here. And without it, you're just like growing with that and getting on a higher level than you would if you would stay in the same place. So yeah.
What is your, Yelena, what is your plan when you finish at the business school that you're at right now in Madrid? Is coming back home an option, or are you already thinking, okay, what's going to be next for me?
So honestly, in the beginning, I thought that I would go back home. But now when you go abroad and when you experience this, you realize that actually you're not going to go back. Maybe you never know what will happen in the future, but you're looking at other opportunities, for example, to go somewhere else, to some other city, or stay here. So for now, I think that it's not an option to go back, because I also want to do a master, and I would like that to be also either here or in US or elsewhere in the world.
And how is Yelena, the experience of going to school in times of pandemic? Everything is, if I'm not mistaken, online, just as we are this year. How different is it?
So actually here it's almost everything on campus. So some courses are taken online, but in Madrid, the situation is we're not in lockdown. So everything is open right now. There is a curfew, but I have classes on campus and some people are online. But I really like that experience because professors are really nice, and like people around you, it's really different because everything is much bigger university classrooms. And yeah, I really like it here.
The same question goes to Tin and Brin, online versus offline.
Well, Brin, if you don't mind. Well, personally, why not? I think it's a great time to study because we are all witnesses of a major change caused by COVID. And why not educating yourself how to be on the forefront of the change? I mean, not just waiting for it to happen, but to learn how to be protagonist of the change. But I think also a very supportive group at university helps you to go through it. So if you're very like uniform, then I think everything is going to be fine. You just, adapt and that's it.
Right. We have to always try to adapt. Brin?
Tim's answers are all super well done.
I totally agree. He's always ready.
No, I mean, from my end, I share the same mindset. I mean, I think a lot of schools or universities generally kind of adopted a system that has both online and offline studying, and they've really worked hard for their students at the end of the day. So I wouldn't say that Corona is a reason to stop studying. For me personally, it kind of worked out since I work full time, and so I have these filmed classes. I have a self-managed timetable, so it's a lot. From my end, this flexibility really helps me out. On the other side of the spectrum, I can understand how online learning is difficult or isn't really something that people want to do. But then again, I think universities generally have a good system for that kind of situation.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Ottavia, I know that you graduated, so I'm not going to ask you about online versus offline, but you mentioned earlier you couldn't be what you wanted to be if you stayed in Italy because there's no school for you in Italy. But besides that, do you think that there's something lacking in the educational system in your country in terms of better education and preparation of young people for some kind of professional life afterwards?
Yes, the problem for me was that there is a school, but it's not recognized in the world. So if I would have stayed in Milan, I would have studied there, but then I had to take I would have to take an exam to be recognized worldwide. Mm-hmm. So I just took the opportunity and I went to London. And but I think yes, there is a lacking of practice, I mean, in experience also, because it's really when I do interviews here, they are really flattered when I say I'm from an Italian I graduated from an Italian university and then I have a master's degree in London, but because they know that the university in Italy are really hard. Like really, there is a lot of studying, but really, I think in the end, I think university needed more to push you into the working life and do more of experience in terms of working. So with my internship in Vernier, I took 5 credits, only 5 out of 35 or something, and it's not that great. I mean, I did a 8-month internship in New York and my university didn't recognize a lot about that. So I think there is the need of pushing students to work and to go, maybe not from the 3rd year, maybe from the 1st year. So
to be more hands-on and to be in the real world and to feel what they're really going to be doing and not just talking about it.
Because after when you go to interviews, they ask you, okay, you're well prepared, you're great, but you don't have experience. So it's a problem.
It's always kind of a vicious circle. If you want to finish your school in time and be a good student, you have to study a lot. But then at the same time, when you graduate, people ask you, well, you don't actually know how to do the job. Well, yeah, it's a vicious circle indeed. Ottavia, what are your plans? I asked Jelena if she's going to be going back home, and she said probably no. What about you?
No, I'm not planning to go home because in the beginning, after the pandemic, I had a job in Milan as a diamond dealer, helping this diamond dealer. But after the pandemic, he reached out to me and said the situation is really bad, and now I want to stay here because there is a lot of opportunities here. There is Hutton Garden. There is the biggest marketplace of diamonds and precious stones in Europe, and also because of Brexit, London is gonna become really important in the market of gems and jewelry. So for me, Brexit is a good thing actually, and because also I have already the pre-settlement because I study here, and also if you decided to study in UK, you will get the pre-settlement, and then you will get the right to work. So it's a great thing. And so I'm gonna stay here, and because in Milan there is no market for now, and big companies are not really hiring, so I'm staying here.
Okay, so
and
Ottavia,
I didn't want to go home.
Okay, so Ottavia from London, at least for the time being. Thank you so much. Question for Brin and for Tin. We've talked about all the lovely things that you guys experience on a daily basis and have experienced so far. But let's talk a bit about challenges. I'm not going to say, were there situations where you were I'm going to say surprised about things that you saw and you know, getting to know things from a different perspective. Oh, I thought that this is going to go easier. This is going to be easier, blah, blah, blah. The biggest challenges of leaving your country and leaving your home. Brin and Tin, whoever wants to go first. Tin can go first. He wants to. I can see it in your eyes.
I don't. Well, I think definitely the biggest challenge is just to put yourself out of your comfort zone. I mean, of course, leaving home, friends, and country does sound frightening, but you know, once you get out there and meet people and explore your surroundings, I think this feeling of being frightened starts to fade away. And then there is also a possible language barrier everybody knows, which is, I'm sure, easy to overcome once you talk to people and you're eager to learn and listen. And also finding new friends, but that shouldn't really be a problem because your new classmates are in the same position as you are. So I think that all these challenges, however big they seem at first, I think they're nothing but a normal feeling that quickly disappears as you get to know your new environment.
Okay, once again, Tin, flawless. Brin?
Same. Okay. For me, I would agree on all of the points that Tim said, to be honest. Like I mentioned before, the comfort zone is a real thing. And it's probably, you know, people don't pay attention to it enough. You know, you're leaving your hometown. You think, I don't know, sometimes you think you're something, and then you come to somewhere else where there's a bunch of new people who maybe had the exact same thinking as you. And now you notice that you're one of like 10,000 and it's not really all that great like you thought it was. So it's just kind of like a new competition. You've entered into a new pool of people. From the other standpoint, I think a lot of it kind of depends. For me, it was discipline a lot. You know, I left high school. I left my home. I was alone in London for 3 years. For me, it was a lot of, you know, it's not time to go out. It's not time to have fun. You know, and it's time to. I mean, everything to a certain extent is good, but at the beginning, that was definitely my biggest issue, discipline and time management. But you know, everything comes as you're there, everything comes.
I mean, you really have to grow up very fast because you're all alone. And as you said, you have to manage your own time and your own responsibility. You don't have your parents telling you, hey, did you finish your homework? What time is the exam? Blah, blah, blah. You have to be your own boss. So it sounds lovely, but when you're in that situation, it's kind of scary, I think.
I mean, it just kind of, you know, all of your responsibilities hit you hard once if you don't pay attention to them, and yeah.
And especially now, listening to Brin. I mean, Jelena, you're 19, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I'm 19.
Yes, it's a very, very young age. And I know a lot of people, I mean, they're 35 and they still have no idea what they want to do in their lives. Yeah. And it's a huge decision for you. And how does it, do you feel alone? Do you feel scared? Do you feel the responsibility that Brin was talking about earlier?
So when I was leaving my country, I was 18 years old, and I thought I will get that fear that I will be scared or that I won't meet anyone. But actually, that fear never got to me because all of my friends, they were saying, are you sure you want to go outside to study abroad? Because my closest friends, they all stayed there. So I thought that maybe I will get that fear eventually, but actually I did not, because since the first day I came here, I met so many people. I knew that even though I'm not physically with my family and friends, that they're always with me in my heart and that I always talk to them on my phone. So I was never feeling lonely or scared here because I met so many people and I had all good things to say about this. So yeah, even though I was young when I left the country, it was not a scary experience.
Great. I'm glad that you only have positive experience, and I'm going to say only nice things about all of you after we finish this today. We came to the end. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jelena. Thank you, Otavia. Thank you, Tin. Tin is going to be a politician and Brin is going to be an entrepreneur. And they're going to be working together because they get along so lovely.
Sounds great. Sounds great.
Thank you. Sounds great. I know it does. Well, and just Tin, remember who said it first, okay?
Definitely.
Okay, good. So thanks again, guys, and well, good luck. Hopefully, we're going to see each other next year face-to-face on Career Paths Connect. Stay safe.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Bye-bye.
This is it. I hope you had a good time with us today. On behalf of our organization at Career Paths, I would like to thank all of our panelists and our guests on their time that they spent with us today. And of course, all of you who are watching us. As for next year, hopefully 2022 is going to be the year that we're going to be seeing each other in person. If you want to watch more of our panels and our panelists, you can do so on our official website. Also, on our official website, you can see much more information about our partners and exhibiting schools. Until next year, stay safe.